Hello, everyone. My name is Adam Weiner, and I am one of the co-chairs for this year's Rocket City Weatherfest. Thank you for joining us on day 3 with another live presentation by Mr. Barron here. And also we have along with us Shelby Bagwell, who is the UAH AMS NWA Student Chapter President, and she'll be moderating the Q&A that will happen towards the end of this, or at the end of the presentation here. So I'll get started with introducing our speaker here. Mr. Barron was an on-air meteorologist for over 20 years. He is a proud graduate of the University of Tennessee and a long-standing member of the American Meteorological Society. He was also named an AMS Fellow in 2010, and he is the founder of Barron Services. And today, he's here to talk with us a bit about the company, as well as the new Critical Weather Institute that recently started at his company. So without further ado, I'll let him take it away.
Well, thanks, Adam. You'll have to forgive me. I'm a newbie at all of this, so we'll maybe enter this very slowly. Speaking of newbie, those of you who know me may have noticed something new here. This is what I call my COVID quaff. And the wife says I can keep it only so long as we're in lockdown, and then I have to go back to the old way. And those of you who remember the old way, this is the way I normally look. Anyways, it's a real pleasure and an honor to be here and to talk with everybody today. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about my background and then move forward, really speaking about the last 10 years since the 2011 super outbreak of tornadoes. I came to Huntsville in 1975. That was a year after the original super outbreak of tornadoes, the April 3rd and 4th of 1974. So I didn't actually see the tornado from a close vantage point, but I lived in the valley and I worked up on the mountain. And so every single day I went up Montesano and I saw those broken, twisted trees. And it was a pretty strong indication of why this community, and particularly this area, is so sensitive to weather. We've had some really big stuff come through. I started in broadcast television in what I would call the golden era. We only had a couple of other stations that were competitors, and so you only had a choice of about 3. And I entered while we were still doing wall maps. You can see there on the right, and fortunately we transitioned from those wall maps to computers during my time period. You can see that my penmanship is not the greatest. However, over on the left, you see where it says Ion Weather. That is I think the first graphical 5-day forecast. The consultants thought it was pretty exciting, and so they kind of passed that around. But we're in an exciting period of time because computers were just coming in, and so is big data. We were getting satellite imagery. As a matter of fact, in Huntsville, we introduced the first digital satellite imagery and the first computer into the marketplace. Over a period of years, about 10 years or so, adding the new capabilities, I thought I was really prepared for just about any severe weather event. But then came November the 15th, 1989, and an F4 came through in the afternoon, completely without warning. We had 23 fatalities that day, but it even when we knew there was one on the ground, we didn't know where it was. We didn't know how big it was, what direction it was heading, and how fast. So there was no way that we could get good information to the public then. And sitting there and talking with latchkey kids that were caught at home without their parents for that event, was something that really lasts a lifetime. And so I felt like I'd kind of failed in my fiduciary responsibility to the public. And we started the company then, actually a couple of months afterward. And the whole focus was on detection, dissemination, and response. The research that we did initially on this particular tornado indicated that you really had to be able to detect a significant weather event, and you had to disseminate the information to those who were in harm's way. And that all had to be done with enough specificity that they actually responded the way they needed to, which was to take precautions to save their lives. And that detection, dissemination, and response had to occur within about 10 minutes, or you started losing lives. So we started with that premise: detection, dissemination, and response. And we actually haven't departed much from it over the last, almost 30 years now. The company started with storm tracking. If you recall the early days, we did manual storm tracking where you could click on the storm. We could zoom into the storm due to the database or the mapping that we had, and then draw out a little arrow in the direction and the speed that you thought the storm was traveling, let loose. The computer would make a box and then identify all the little communities from a database inside that box and indicate the estimated time of storm arrival for each one of those communities. And it was the first really specific information that was provided to the public. We did that manually to begin with, because that's the way it was back in those days. But over time, spent a lot of time automating the identification or the detection of significant weather, and then turned our attentions to how we get that information out on a timely basis. Our storm tracker relied on live radar. And so as we looked around, there really weren't a lot of live radars at television stations across the country, and it kind of forced us to get into the radar business. I never would have thought we'd have been in the radar business, but we started manufacturing radars back in the mid 90s. I got my instrument rating as a pilot in 2000, and once you get up in the air and you've got nothing but white as you look out that cockpit, there was a strong desire to get the weather into the cockpit with me. And we worked out a relationship with XM satellite radio to distribute data to pilots via their avionics. We worked with companies like Garmin and Honeywell, Bendix King, to actually put this radar data, not just radar data, it was a suite of products onto the avionics for pilots, which became a pretty big part of what we did. And then, of course, we had displays and apps that came kind of late in the period. So that's kind of an overview of the last 20 years. Let me do some shameless self-promotion here, and I'm going to play the latest of our promotional videos. And of course, there's no audio.
Yeah, we can certainly fix that.
No, what?
We can fix that and have your share sound.
Oh, okay. Share.
So if you go to, let's see here, you should be able to go to your perhaps under your share screen option. There should be a little arrow up.
Okay.
You see a share computer audio or sound.
So there we are right here. All right. Okay, so we go share.
Oh, okay.
No, maybe we won't. See, it is very, very difficult to teach an old dog new tricks.
No worries, no worries. Is this video available online where it can be shared with
We'll
participants
make
here?
it. I will make it available.
Okay.
So install. Yeah, we're going to have to install something or other here.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, you can just click cancel and we'll move along here.
All right. Well, I guess I won't have any shameless self-promotion. I was going to show you, as a matter of fact, let me back up here. And maybe I can kind of describe. One of the things that I really wanted to point out was that over time, we've gotten a lot better at defining and automating the detection of significant weather. We started looking not at velocities, but at shear, and basically asking the computer to find for us areas where there were increasing and then decreasing outbound winds butted up against or gate to gate with increasing and then decreasing inbound winds. And if you look for that little area, you've got 50 outbound, 50 inbound. May or may not be a tornado, but it definitely would be an area of concern. And so we circled it, and the famous, well, in many areas, the famous Baron beer cans kind of encircled the areas that we thought were the most dangerous, and has been the basis actually of all the storm tracking that we've done over the last several years. Hey, there's Swirl. There was a storm track. It kind of loses something without audio. All right. Well, anyway, that kind of takes you through to where we were today. But I think the focus really is supposed to be on the last 10 years since the super outbreak of 2011. So I will focus on that pretty well. Let me ask one question here. How do maybe I know, I do. On April 27th, 2011, we got hit by a super outbreak of tornadoes that was a magnitude of difference as far as problems are concerned. I don't think that we will ever see a day like we saw that day. At one point, multiple F4s and an F5 on the ground at the same time. Everyone talked about the Tuscaloosa tornado because there was dramatic video there, but the last of the super outbreak across North Alabama was in complete power outage. One of those storms early in the afternoon took out a TVA trunk line, and so there was no power going to North Alabama other than on generators, and it created a substantial additional problem, obviously, to all of the things that we were accustomed to doing during severe weather events. And here it was a super outbreak. I put some notes up here, but there we go. The worst ever surpasses the worst ever. We looked at the April 3rd, 74 super outbreak, and that was the outbreak that Dr. Fujita used to come up with the original F chart, F1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 tornadoes. In that outbreak, there were 8 Alabama tornadoes and 86 fatalities. In 11, Alabama had 62 tornadoes and 253 fatalities. So a dramatic difference, really, in the number of tornadoes, how we had to handle it. I think over the years from the '89 tornado, and as our company grew, I've seen some significant advances in the ability to identify severe weather. But there were over 8 times as many tornadoes that day. I thought our folks here, the media, the National Weather Service, the local emergency folks, all did a really good job of defining those events. We had tornadoes that were in training upon tornadoes, and really, really challenging to pass along the necessary information. The dissemination was spotty, but it wasn't because of the media. It was because of our means of communication. The early waves, and I think there were about 3 waves of severe weather, but the early waves knocked out the power. And here in North Alabama, you had this first wave of tornadic activity. It was well warned for. Then all of a sudden the sun comes out, and with no power, many of our residents thought that was it, that was the severe weather. But these storms in training came right across the same areas that had experienced such problems earlier. So our dissemination was spotty. I noted at the time that our company went on emergency generator. Actually, we went on emergency generator for a solid week. It took a week for TVA to correct the power problem. And all of our clients, television stations, went on emergency generator. But we've had significant changes in the last several years when we've gone to digital television, in that the old portable radios and portable television sets that you used to have just don't exist anymore. And it became very difficult for information to travel from the television stations, for instance, to the general public that needed the help. And as a result, the response was pretty poor that day. People just weren't getting out of the way. They weren't staying in shelters until this whole series of tornadoes was over. So in the wake of that, the governor commissioned a committee to determine what things were done right and what things were done wrong. With the complete power outage, it was obvious that we had a need for instantaneous and very specific warnings and advisories. Even the cell service actually went out but it was the last to go. And so we had been dealing in this area of dissemination with an app that provided not only the polygon information from the National Weather Service, but our own delineation of strong storms and twisting storms. What we've noted over time, and this is something I'd be happy to discuss when we get to the Q&A, but what we noted over time was that if conditions are ripe, you may or may not have a tornado, but you'll have a strong storm come across. For instance, if I can determine that there's a twisting in the atmosphere, just letting you know that there's a twisting storm comes as an advisory in advance of the National Weather Service issuing a warning. And in most cases, the Weather Service does issue a warning, but there are many circumstances when those warnings are delayed for whatever, and in some cases, not at all. And we found that advising on a very site-specific basis for strong and for twisting storms in advance serves as its own specific tool toward advising the public of significant weather. We had that capability. We were putting it into an app at the time. It's kind of interesting to go back and look at things historically. I didn't realize it, but cell phone apps didn't even come into existence until around 2008. That was the first that we had app stores that you could get apps for. So the whole cellular circumstance was something that was kind of brand new back in those days. We had developed a concept of identifying where somebody was and having them register for a specific location. And then if a storm was going to affect that location, we could send a text message to a beeper, which was actually more in use in those days than cell phones were. But that same concept, that same patented concept, applied itself directly to an app that had, for instance, Follow Me technology. It was, I thought, extremely difficult, maybe impossible, to explain to all government agencies exactly what an app could do as far as advising the public with very specific information. So we decided that what we would do is to donate our whole safety net for the state of Alabama to the state of Alabama. We offered that to Governor Bentley at the time, and we were accepted on that and made it available to those who lived in the state of Alabama. There were about I think about 250,000 downloads initially, and we started providing the information, site-specific information in advisories and warnings. And I kind of stopped counting, but about 5 years ago, we had over 5 million warnings that had gone out to folks across the state. What you're seeing on the screen right now is what's called App Messenger, and we supplied each emergency management office with the ability to encircle the users that would be appropriate and be able to send two-way communication to them. So they didn't know who you were, but they knew where you were, and they could send messages out. They could receive messages and pictures back. And I still think that it was a system that was pretty well ahead of its time. But we've tried to do our part to improve the safety standard. I would say that all of this was focused on non-conventional communications. If the cell phone towers themselves went out, but they were more reliable than anything else, I would say that this new generation, those of you who are watching me this morning, should be looking at how do we communicate in a non-conventional way when we have a circumstance such as occurred in 2011 and all of the standard means of communication are down. I think that there's something that needs to be done with radio and television, particularly so that we have non-conventional means of getting to the public, but I'm going to leave that to another generation. Also, with regard to the super outbreak, is our work in dual polarity radar. We've been heavily involved in dual polarity from about 2004 on. It is not an unnoticed irony that our first dual pol radar was for the University of Alabama, Huntsville. The swirl folks, you swirl folks, came to us and suggested that maybe we upgrade the National Weather Service old radar that's out at the airport into a dual pol unit. And this was the first that we'd actually had any experience in dual polarity. Those of you who may not be familiar with it, the difference is you normally have a horizontal signal go out, it hits a target, it comes back, and it tells you approximately what the width is of objects that are out there. With dual polarity, you send out a horizontal and you also send out a vertical signal, and you monitor both of those and you measure both of those against each other. And you start coming out with not only widths, but heights, and a much better look at the kind of particles that are in the atmosphere. We had a very early opportunity to start experimentation in that area. Added Houston and New York and Tampa and some other locations for dual pol radars. And the National Weather Service in 2008 or so determined that they wanted to upgrade to dual polarity. We made a proposal to them, and they came back to us and said, you can't do the things that you say you can do. And we said, well, let's have you visit Houston and New York and Tampa and some of these other places, and UAH for that matter, and we can show you that we actually can. And with the experience that we garnered, we did win the contract and have upgraded all 171 NextRads. That started in 2009. It was a big contract for us and a wonderful opportunity for us to work with others. The local upgrade didn't happen, however, before the super outbreak. We added dual polarity in Birmingham and in Huntsville in 2012, so we were a couple of years late on that, but worked with the National Weather Service sharing the new technology, and one of which I just have to point out is correlation coefficient. That was probably the biggest thing that has come from it. If you are, well, if you're not aware of what coefficient correlation is, if you're looking at little segments of a radar image, this new moment that we were able to look at could tell us how much of a variation there was in the size of the particles that were in each one of these, what they call range bins. And we know that if everything is the same, say you've got mist and all of the raindrops of the same size, that coefficient is close to 1. Everything looks exactly the same. But if it gets closer to 0, then you've got a circumstance where maybe some of those particles are raindrops, but other particles might be cows. And that correlation coefficient, particularly when you know where the shear is, can be and is an indicator of debris that's coming up in the atmosphere. And it was probably one of the most exciting aspects of what we learned from the dual polarity. But we're still learning a lot of new things, particularly areas of shear and also areas of accumulation in the new technology. Okay, so that's what we did as a company. I want to talk a little bit about another project of mine, and that is the Barron Critical Weather Institute. I noted that the state is fairly well covered with radar, particularly in the populated areas. Here in North Alabama, we've got private and Weather Service NextRad radar that do a pretty doggone good job at covering the area. And we also have NextRads in Montgomery and Birmingham and Mobile. There are some areas in Southwest Alabama that really don't have all that great a coverage, but generally speaking, we get to see a lot of the sky over the state of Alabama with radar. But in discussions, we noted that there is no statewide mesonet of boundary level. We can survey the skies, but we can't really see what's happening on the surface of the earth. And so speaking of the skies, how about if we had cameras? This became a focus of my new nonprofit. This is an arm's length institute from Barron the Company. We're a nonprofit 501c3, and our mission is world-class instrumentation in support of public safety, statewide high-density real-time mesonet, which I'm going to spend a little bit more time on. Educational outreach. We are partnered now with the Space and Rocket Center, and we'll have a permanent How We Know the Weather exhibit at the Space and Rocket Center. Give us some opportunity for some STEM work, teaching young people, maybe older people, how we know the weather, how we use instrumentation to tell us what's going on, not only on the surface of the earth, but in space as well. And then if we have our high density real-time mesonet, I believe that we will see public-private academia consortiums develop. That's the concept. My idea is to develop a mesonet first and then to make it a high density mesonet. We have sensors now, solid state sensors, that are giving us updates every 10 seconds, and 2K cameras that we're starting to be placing in areas across the state. So calling upon you actually in the longer term to help and support. This is an outreach program that I think is very important for the state of Alabama. We're teaming with Alabama Emergency Management, with Alabama Department of Transportation, and Alabama Power, among others, to create a statewide mesonet with at least one sensor cam in each county. Joining us in this endeavor is the South Alabama mesonet, which is called Chile, and a product of the University of South Alabama. And we're working with Huntsville Utilities, county commissions, 9/11 to demonstrate a high density net in Madison and Etowah counties, which I hope to show you here in a second. The network will make the state a leader in instrumentation. It's online and available to everybody, state entities, general population, and to the media. If you're media, we only ask that you include the Institute logo in your depictions on air, but we're archiving all of the data for R&D purposes statewide. And then Madison County is the first to provide funding for the effort. That's something that I would like to encourage going forward. We're going to have another problem here. I wanted to show the problem that comes up the next slide. What you see on screen are some of the key participants in the program. Brian Hastings is the director of the Alabama Emergency Management Agency. He's on our Science Council and has been doing a great job in helping us work with EMAs in each one of the counties to install a system. John Christie, of course, is our state climatologist, and Tsitska Kimball is the director of environmental services, educational services at the University of South Alabama. And as you see there, that was kind of where we started with an overall map. You can see the wind vanes in the northern part of the state, very little in the middle, and then Sietska's got her system set up in South Alabama. We have also been able to add the Alabama DOT road weather systems. They're called RWIS, and that has become a part of what the network is going to be. Now, I've got a video here from our installation of system in Tuscaloosa in partnership with Alabama Power, but we're going to have the same circumstance with them that I won't be able to provide you with the audio. But there are some interesting aspects. Here's the environmental box that keeps the camera properly operational, dry and operational. And that is the solid state instrument pack that's part of it. So they're not very large and very compact. And these are the systems that we're placing on towers. We're asking each county to define tower and power and Wi-Fi to assist us. If you would like to see the map, go to the Barron Institute webpage, and then you click on View Map. This is how it looks installed on the tower. This is the Tuscaloosa location, but you can see the camera and the sensor pack are put onto the tower there. Fairly easy installation, and we try to get as high a site as possible. But a pretty good example there of how it looks, and what we get from it is this, and this is the view that we have over Tuscaloosa, looking mostly west. Absolutely fortunate in that we just recently put this up, and here is living proof as to the importance of having cameras that can surveil all of the skies over Alabama. I want you to look on the horizon, but Wednesday, that one of the two F1s that occurred, you'll actually see on the time lapse. There she goes. And then actually the clouds move on, obviously, and the second tornado was just the other side of the camera. So what I think this proves is we got to have more cameras and more instrumentation and an ability to see all of the skies over the state of Alabama. I'm also pretty impressed with what we're able to do as far as seeing nighttime weather events. I'm going to show you this. This is actually from last Christmas, and or in that area, right around Christmas time, there was a tornado that was located just to the west of Huntsville. This is a site on top of Green Mountain. Looks an awful lot like our home, and the tornado had dissipated, but the wall cloud continued to move across the county. And this is what we were able to see even in the dark. A lot of lightning associated with it. And you'll see one airplane taking off from the airport there off to the left. Boom. So anyway, pretty exciting, I think, our effort to outfit the entire state with a mesonet, and then to get a high density mesonet. These are the various addresses. Just barroninstitute.com will get you to our webpage, and then you click on View Map, and you too will be able to monitor all that we're doing. Now, I hope this will work. I'm doing this. I can't see anybody anymore, so I don't know whether all of this is functional or not.
Yeah, we can see the map.
Okay, great. So this is our Mesonet as it exists right now. Most of our work has been in North Alabama, but I'll show you some of the other initiatives, and I'll also show you how all of this works. In the upper right-hand corner is the layers icon, and you can click on it and turn radar on and off. You can turn the EMA offices on and off, the county borders, and the various, well, here's cameras, and these are our instrumentation here. The Chile network, well, you're not going to see it because they're in South Alabama. And then there's ALDOT, Alabama DOT, and these are road weather sensors, but we're including them. The Barron instrumentation gives you 10-second updates on each of the locations that we have so far. And then the little icons, the camera icons, some are streaming and some are frame by frame every 6 seconds or so. We're still experimenting with the best way of presenting the data. But let me also, you have a choice here of units, US or metric, and then this markers is each one of the sensors. You can just make a circle, make a single value, do a barb or a barb plus value. Mostly I just keep it at barb plus value. And then you get down here, first variable with barb plus value. I've got temperature right now, and the second is wind gusts, but you have your choice here. You can put any one of the values in. And so what you get then is, in this particular case, you get an ongoing instant posting of the temperature and an ongoing instant posting of the highest wind gust, along with average wind speed, which is what the units are changing to here, the wind direction. And then, of course, if you click on them, let's click on Molten here. You get certain information, or you can click more, and this gives you all of the information. But there's air temperature, dew point, pressure, winds, average winds, gusts, precipitation, highs and lows, direct solar radiation, for instance, and then what the elevation is. So you're getting quite a bit of information, and all you have to do is click on it on the map. I am going to zoom in a little bit here. So we do plus plus plus. And all you have to do to see what the cameras are showing is just click on them, and then you can oops. Well, things are clearing out in Molten. So I don't want to show you that, actually. I want to, where there's some clouds. Let's try, yeah, this will work. So this is one that we call intermodal. It's actually looking over the airport in Huntsville. And every one of these images, you can go down to the bottom left here on those two areas and click, and it will set you up to do a time lapse. And so every one of the images provides you with a lapse capability, and you can look, you actually set the lapse up according to what you want. Yeah, let's see here. See down here in the bottom left, you can set the date, the start time and the end time, and what the steps are in between. I've just got sort of a default setting here, so I get to see about the last half hour in each one of these. This is one of the units that we're doing in partnership with Huntsville Utilities. Let me show you down here. this is work that we're doing, as we were saying, with Alabama Power. The Tuscaloosa camera is located here. And they just installed a Birmingham camera, although it's not up high enough. We're looking at an awful lot of roof. But we'll have a really nice view of Birmingham here in the very near future. And the object, we have offered to provide each county a single unit. So that would include an instrument pack and the camera, and it can be placed into service wherever somebody feels like it's the best place. And let's see, I think Elmore County just came online. Yeah, it's South Alabama, went right past it down. Oh, here's Montgomery. Yeah, here's Elmore County, and they too really need to loft their camera higher. But we're starting to get a picture from Elmore, from Wetumpka, on a consistent basis. What I'd like to get to is what I call a high density network, and I think that's going to entail about 10 to 15 units in every county. We've got 2 counties where that process is underway. Etowah County Emergency Management has kind of taken it on themselves to completely cover the county, and but they are contributing their cameras to the network, and they're using our sensor packs to provide the 10-second updates. But this is one of the cameras in Etowah County, and all of these can be time lapsed. And the instruments, you're giving you 10-second updates from this location. I think they've got about 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in place, and I believe there's another 4 that are supposed to go into the northern part of the county. It's pretty similar to what is happening in Madison County. We've got about half of the county covered. I just showed you the intermodal, but here's New Hope, for instance. We've got some really good locations, and we'll be filling in the northern part of the county here with an additional 4 units in the fairly near future. It's my wish that we're able to survey all of the skies over the state of Alabama and have 10-second information from at least 10 to 15 sites in each one of the counties. We're experimenting a lot, working with ALDOT on, this is our own road weather system that's up in North Florence, and it's providing a lot of road weather information. You can see here road stability and grip index and certain items that are the result of examining the roads there. This is the Institute unit, and it's performing very well in comparison to the other road weather sensors that ALDOT has up. We're also working cooperatively with them. The Molten camera is actually a joint venture with ALDOT, and here in Decatur, this is an algo camera that is appropriate, and it gives us a view going into Decatur, but it also gives us a view of the sky. ALDOT likes to look at roads, and we like to look at skies, so there aren't a whole bunch of mutual cameras at this point, but we're looking to actually satisfy both needs. And so that is basically it. I am going to unshare. How do I unshare? Stop share. I bet you is it.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Oops. Hang on.
No worries. Thank you very much for your presentation. Certainly very interesting, very insightful to hear about your company and what it is doing. And now we would like to move into the Q&A section of this live webinar. So please, anyone in the Zoom webinar, feel free to use the Q&A button that's located near the bottom of your window to enter any questions. And those on Facebook Live, feel free to comment any questions, and we'll be sure to get to them as time allows. So with that, we do have a couple of questions that our UAH AMS NWA President, Shelby, would like to ask. So we'll get started with her.
Yeah, so one of the questions we have is, how has the collaboration and communication between the different sectors changed since 2011?
Between, for instance, weather service and emergency operations, and well, of course, with chat and with all of the social media that's available, there's been some substantial enhancements. I think there are still some problems, however, that exist in intercommunication among emergency operations. Police and sheriff, in many cases, still don't have a quick interoperability, but I am aware of companies. As a matter of fact, I'm supporting one company that's attempting to be an intermediary and allow for communications back and forth among the media, but not the media, emergency management. The truth is that from a visual standpoint, I think these apps that we have allow for quick communication with the public, back and forth with the public. I know that our Safety Net app does that. You can communicate pretty rapidly, but then there's not an interface really to communicate well with emergency agencies, in our case, other than emergency management. So there are areas where I think we can do a whole lot better than what we've done.
All right, our next question is there a way to donate to the Rocket Center exhibit, and when will that exhibit happen?
There sure is. We are a 501c3, so that means that we're a nonprofit, and you can write it off on your income taxes, and we would accept donations of any kind at any time. I haven't been asking for any. When we set up the Institute to begin with, we self-funded with the idea that we were going to place one sensor in every county in the state of Alabama. And we're prepared to do that just to show how important it is. But ultimately, in order to do the high density network that I want to do, we are going to need funding, and we'll take it from just about anywhere we can. How we know the weather exhibit at the Space and Rocket Center, we'll be looking for some sponsorship on that as well. We haven't quite decided on exactly what the exhibit's going to be, so I haven't been asking for funding. But hold that thought, and make sure that you have our address down. Anyone who would like to contribute, and over and above financial support, I would love to have as much volunteerism as I could get for the project. We currently are in the field with emergency management, trying to put these things up. There are a lot of things that are going on that it basically is a volunteer effort. So I would welcome any and all support for the project. It's been kind of a sad refrain that Alabama is about one of half of the states in the country that don't have a statewide mesonet, and I want to change that. I want to drag us into the 20th century at least, and hopefully even head toward the 21st.
Our next question is, how will your radar systems that are being installed in other countries help with those countries' forecasts?
Well, we think they will do a huge job. Usually, radar is a real-time tool. I point out that it's the largest weather instrument that we have on the surface of the Earth, and it allows the user to survey their area of responsibility, and slightly above the boundary level, you're getting some very good information on what's happening, and the ability to pass along that information to the public. The radars, however, once they're in place, become a part of numerical weather prediction. They help in initializing forecast models that give you a better idea of what's going to happen as well. So there's a lot of participation that radars have. We're engaged in a project in Ukraine, and we did something similar in Romania. Their biggest problem is hail in those countries. So they're looking for real-time hail, but they're also looking for what's going to happen. They want to protect their vineyards and their crops primarily. And in both cases, this is kind of interesting. They will use radar information to anticipate where hail delivering storms are, and they send out, it's almost like storm chasers here in the United States, but they send out their storm chasers with the cannons that fire silver iodide up into the clouds and try to suppress hail. So it's kind of interesting how radar and weather instrumentation is used in different parts of the world.
That is really interesting. So our next question is, you talked about the app that Barron has. What do you think sets it apart from TV alerts or alerts that people can get on their phones?
I'm sorry, could you ask that again one more time?
Yeah, sorry. So what do you think sets apart Barron's app from the alerts people can get on their TV or the ones that come through their phone, like the emergency alerts?
Well, I would suggest that you download it and you'll see what the difference is. It has the same kind of information that most of the apps out there have, the forecast information and look at the next 7 days and current radar imagery. The unique aspect of the Alabama safety net was two unique aspects. I'll come to think of it, 3 unique aspects. The unique aspect is that it is operating in conjunction with the state emergency management. So you actually have an interaction there with that app. And you'll note that in many areas, the state is promoting Alabama Safety Net. The app is the only app, no, that's not true. The Barron app, Alabama Safety Net, and then it's used by other television stations in other parts of the country, is the only app that gives you an advance warning of significant weather coming. So if there is, all of the warnings are like Polygon organized, coming from the National Weather Service, and ours are very point specific. We have spent a lot of time identifying significant weather, where it's been, so we know where it's headed, and being able to advise only those in harm's way. So if the app pings you and says there's a strong storm headed your way, you're going to have a strong storm, whether it's a severe thunderstorm or not. That's for the Weather Service to determine and issue a warning on. If there is a twisting of the atmosphere, things that we look at that are the beginnings of potential tornado, we will send a message out that says that a twisting storm is approaching. Does not mean it's a tornado. Does not mean it's a tornado, but it does mean that the atmosphere is such that a tornado could develop. And again, it's an advisory in advance of what the National Weather Service might offer. And it's one additional safety measure. I noticed yesterday that my buddy James Spann said that you need to have at least 2 means of emergency access, and I absolutely agree with that. Need to have at least two. We're not a weather radio, and I think you should have weather radio. But as a personal device, it follows where you are. It will advise you based on where you are, and it's very site specific. We don't interrupt you, don't get in your way unless you really need to know. And I think that's part of what's important is, and he might mention this yesterday, the false alarm ratio. You don't want to be advising folks too often or they don't pay attention, they tune out. So our advisories and the Weather Service warnings are all pretty site specific. We don't do county warnings, for instance. Oh, and so that was the second thing that's different. The third thing that's different, which I forgot to say in my major and impressive presentation, is that the Mesonet is now included in the Alabama safety net. So if you have the Alabama safety net, one of the sections you just click on, and it takes you to the Alabama Mesonet. So it's all included, one simple single package.
That's really cool. So it looks like we have one more question right now. So what would you like to see your company accomplish in the future?
Oh boy. We are engaged in a number of different verticals. The radar business is of course a major entity. Most of that effort is now international in scope. The National Weather Service has our 171 NextRads and is not really a customer. We are seeing a rebirth of interest in radar by television stations across the country. Some of them we put radars in 20 years ago, and they're now looking at upgrading to dual polarity from the Doppler that they had 20 years ago. But most of our radar work is international, and we're in the process of expanding. Made an investment about 3-4 years ago in our own processor, and we're able to do a lot of processing that is unique. It entails our patented technology and our IP. And so the focus has been on expanding our capability with our processor and continuing to deliver new products as far as data is concerned. In the broadcast community, I'm really excited about the work that we've been doing with the broadcasters. We just had our spring training session, which was our first Zoom training session, but we had over 200 participants from across the country that were looking at some of the new data that's available, some of the new ways of presenting it to try to make things simpler and more understandable to the public. There's really two different levels there. One is for the professional meteorologist to know exactly what's happening, and we try to provide that. But the other is to always remember that the ultimate customer is the public, and they're not necessarily well trained in meteorological information. So there's an effort to do a much better job of really making the public understand. What I tried to relate in the discussion earlier was that if people don't get specific, understandable information, you have to detect something and you have to disseminate the information, but it has to be clear and precise, specific, or people won't react the way they need to. They won't go to safety. What we encountered in '89 was that you'd issue a warning and people would go outside to see whether it affected them, which is not the thing you want them to do. You know, you want them to take cover, and or they tune to another television station just to make sure you were right when they should be going to cover. So I think our efforts in precision and specificity will continue to be things that I want to have grow with the company. and more jump the curb technology. We'll do it. We'll have it.
Well, thank you so much. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat or on Facebook. So this is probably a good place to wrap it up. Adam, if you want to take over.
Certainly. Thank you so much, Mr. Barron, for your presentation and for answering the questions here. We really appreciate your time and participating in this year's virtual Rocket City Weatherfest. So as a reminder for the rest of today's schedule, we will be having a student weather briefing that'll be released by noontime. With the presentation here going a little bit over, we'll have that certainly out by noon. And then we'll also have weather experiment videos that you can certainly check out. They're going to be out on the website on the experiments tab, as well as on the pre-recorded videos tab. Those are actually live right now, so you can take a look as you please. And then we'll also have our last live event, that is a weather balloon launch with the Upstorm Student Organization from the Swirl Building, taking place starting at 3 p.m. And once again, you can join us for that on our Facebook page, which is linked on the website. Once again, the website is sites.google.com/uah.edu/RocketCityWXFest. And with that, thanks again for joining us today. Thank you, Mr. Barron, for the presentation, and everyone take care.